You know, it's great to be back in Oklahoma. I really, this is where we have lived so many years of our lives. It was really funny. We've made trips several times to come up to Oklahoma. My husband's job, he had people that he had to talk to when he would come up here. And so we'd come up here periodically. Well, on one trip we were here and we'd gone into a store, and it's funny how you see something from home that it reminds you, it makes you get all excited. Well, we were in the parking lot and I said, Kent, OU Sooners. I said, isn't that neat? Somebody's got an OU Sooner tag. And he looked at me and he said, Phyllis, we're in Oklahoma. oh, yeah. So it's crazy, but it is good to be in Oklahoma and to see people that we love so dear. And we're so thankful that you all have come to turn out for this lesson. Well, getting into our lesson about home, when you think of that word home, what comes to your mind? Do you think of good times or security? Or do you think of homemade cooking or happiness or contentment? Or do you think about all that homemade, what it really means to you, all the special things, what homemade things mean to you? You know, we live in this fast food disposable time, and a lot of times we don't get things that are homemade. And I especially like homemade cooking. I like homemade rolls and homemade pies and homemade cakes. I think that's the best food that you can find. And why do we like those kind of things? You know, the same ingredients that we use for homemade food are the same ingredients that we use in processed food. And we eat out all the time when we eat at really nice restaurants, and that food is delicious, and we like to eat out. But we all like homemade things because they aren't mass-produced, because they are food that has been prepared with fresh ingredients and with a lot of love that's been added to it. And you know, ladies, our home should be that same way. We all like homes where extra effort and extra love is added. And we know that it takes time and effort to make our homes run smoothly. And today we're told, you know, if you can just get by, you know, it's no big deal. You really don't need to have time to take care of your families. And we just need to take care of ourselves because we're most important. But it takes lots of time and tears and prayer for us to have a successful home. The same is true for our nation. Our nation will only be as strong as our homes are. And of course, that's also so true in the church. And if a church is going to survive in this wicked times, this wicked generation, then we must have godly homes. You know, we think about going home for the holidays. I love that song, I'll Be Home for Christmas, because it brings wonderful memories to us. Home brings memories of security and happiness. I don't know if you've ever watched the Home Shopping Network on TV, but I'm always amazed at the merchandise they sell, and I always like it when they sell jewelry, and they hold that jewelry up and they kind of move it, you know, back and forth, and the lights just reflect it. It looks just beautiful. In fact, even sometimes the jewels that they sell on that Home Shopping Network really aren't real, but they look so beautiful because they're all sparkly under the lights. Well, there was an article several months ago in the USA Today, and it was an article that had a big advertisement about an alternative to a mined diamond. And it was called a Diamond Essence Masterpiece. And the headlines read, "The most astonishing simulated diamond ever created is the result of a revolutionary scientific breakthrough that gives it the look, the color, and the fire of a mined diamond. It even cuts glass." And they advertise these jewels as the closest thing to a real diamond. And in fact, you can buy a larger simulated diamond for a whole lot less than you can pay for a real one. And you can buy it in everything from bracelets to necklaces to rings to all types of jewelry. And they say that these simulated diamonds are so close to a real diamond that only a diamond expert can tell the difference. And of course, we know what the difference is what's on the inside of this diamond. And there are wives that have been fooled, and mothers have been fooled, and friends have been fooled, that these gems that were man-made, they think that are really the real thing. And many women have been persuaded to settle for those things that look like a diamond, that feel like a diamond, that have the color or the cut or the carat or the clarity instead of the real thing. Well, culture today has also fooled older and younger women into settling for a lifestyle just like that diamond essence jewel. The life that has a color of the real thing, or a cut that's just right for them, and a life that carries a lot of value to it. But under the expert eye of the expert jeweler, who is God, there's something lacking in that lifestyle. You know, we like to make our own guidelines and what we think of what God thinks a godly home should be. And we settle for letting someone else raise our children, but we still think, if we just have that quality time with them, well, then it'll be great. And we eat out all the time because we are so tired when we come home from being gone all day to cook. And we hire people to clean our houses because there's just not enough time to do those kind of things. And on the outside, our families look great. They look like they are doing just fine. But if you look a little closer and delve in a little deeper, you're going to see that we're having more and more problems resulting from mom not doing her role at home. Where mom is dead dog tired when she's been gone all day at her job so that she can help provide for the tremendous needs of her family. And for many women, even in the church, we've settled for a high quality cubic zirconium life where everything looks great on the outside, rather than a life that is adorned with a meek and quiet spirit. And that is the real gem. God has entrusted us as Christian women to be keepers of the home, to teach and to train our children, to be good wives to our husbands. It's an awesome responsibility that we have, and we need to take it seriously. This is the real deal. This is the real thing. This is the real gem. If you have your Bibles, if you could turn over to Titus chapter 2, we're going to read verses 3 through 5. And you'll have to bear with me because I am so computer challenged and technically challenged. We'll hope that this works. Let's look at verses 3 through 4. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can train the young women. Older women have a wealth of wisdom that they need to share with younger women. And to those of you who are older Christians, I know that there are many times that you are not treated with the proper respect that you deserve. At the age of 26, there was a woman by the name of Pat Moore, and she conducted a very interesting experiment. She wanted to have a better understanding of what it was like to be a senior adult. And so for 3 years, she disguised herself as about an 86-year-old woman. She would put on professional makeup. She put on a gray wig. She even had these real thick glasses that blurred her vision. And she walked with a very slow shuffle. And do you know what she discovered? She discovered that she was very well treated and had very much compassion from other seniors around her. But she was often treated very harshly by those that were younger. In one city, in fact, she was mugged by a group of 13-year-olds, and she was beaten so badly that she had back trouble for the rest of her life. She experienced firsthand what it is social dismissal of the elderly in this world. And this is not how it is supposed to be. But interestingly, in her book, Disguise, she said, deeply religious people tend to be more caring and aware of the needs of older people, which I thought that really was interesting. But our lack for older people is appalling, and we dismiss their wisdom many, many times. We feel that they're just too old to understand or to add any insightful knowledge to our lives. Well, in Titus 2, 3 through 4, let's read that again. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. And then I want you to listen to what is in verse 4. Then they can train the younger women. Older women have a great responsibility in training younger women in the ways of how to be a good wife and a good mother. These older women need to have certain character attributes that they have to possess. They are to be reverent. And I think a great example of a woman in the Bible that's reverent is found in Luke 2:37, where we read about Anna. It said that she was about 84 years old and that she never left the temple because she was committed to serving through fasting and prayer. She certainly was an outstanding example to model, for here she was, a woman in her mid-80s. She was an active worshiper. This kind of woman is highly respected for her reverence. And people know that she's close to Christ, therefore they want to be close to her. Older women are also to be reverent in the way they live, and that's by their lifestyle. They need to reflect God. They are to be careful with their words. They're not to be slanderous. A wise woman watches her words. Older women are to be communicators of good. And good here means noble and excellent, and the idea of the word is not some kind of formal thing. It's not like conducting a seminar or writing a book or making a CD or holding some formal class, even though these things are very, very good. It is, though, the life they live every day as a model or a pattern of goodness. And older women must be equipped to handle temptations around them, but they always need to be aware of opportunities to teach and to do good. They are to train younger women. And this portrays that idea of coming alongside, of helping these young women. The word good refers to that which is excellent, which provides a superior benefit. And older women need to pass this along, what is beautiful and beneficial, because of their great experience of walking with God. And when older women's children are grown, sorry, older women, you don't get to just sit and wander around and travel around as if you don't have a purpose or any responsibilities. Because you still are responsible to teach the next generation. And you can do that by mentoring, by discipling, by modeling, and by setting an example of how you need to live and how younger women need to be trained to live as well. Which brings us to the next part of our lesson, and that's going to be in verses 4 through 5 in that same text. Then they, of course the older women, can train the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God. Now from these verses, I want to look at 7 qualities that a godly woman possesses and how these women should demonstrate these qualities in the home. In verse 3, it says, "Teach the women to love their husband and their children." That ought to be the attitude that they have in their lives. And I believe that this is the only place in the Bible where it's told that a wife ought to love her husband. We know in Ephesians 5, it says husbands are told to love their wives, and that word there is agape, which means doing the loving thing whether you feel like it or not. But here in this text, the wife is told to love her husband, and that word is phileo, which has to do with a friendship or delighting in one another. And in that day, when so many marriages were arranged by the parents, it was hard at times for women to enjoy her husband. But wives are told here that we need to love our husbands, we need to learn to be friends, we need to take delight in each other. And if you don't love your husband, you need to train yourself to love your husband. You know, it might take a time of serving and serving and serving and do every good and kind thing and do every gracious thing and every generous thing. And I promise you, ladies, if you do that, you're going to make such a large investment in him. You're going to say, I've got too much in this man not to love him. Women, you need to make marriage a priority in your lives and make sure you don't put your personal happiness above that priority. Godly mothers in an ungodly world need to love their husbands. And our children need to see how we love our husbands and how we treat them and how we respect them. We're commanded to love one another even if every situation is not ideal. Now, there are times when it's easy to love our families and our husbands. You know, when your first marriage and everything is wonderful and you're romantic, it's easy. Or when your children are first born and they're so sweet and cuddly and you just hold them and you just love them and they're precious. It's so easy to love them then, and then they grow up to be teenagers. But there are times when it is not easy to love our family. You know, when your husband goes and plays golf for the 3rd Saturday in a row and he leaves you home with the small children and he leaves you at home to take care of all the things that needed to be taken care of around the house. Or when he's thoughtless, or possibly even when he's unfaithful. It's hard to love. Or when your child complains about what you cook, or talks disrespectfully back to you, or if your child is on drugs, or they're lying to you, or behaves abnormally, it's hard to love them. But those are times, as a Christian wife and as a Christian mother, that you have to make a special effort to give them your love. Bill Cosby says in his book, Happily Ever After, he says, the ultimate challenge for a woman in marriage is to accept it for the rerun that it is, but to keep herself from canceling the show. There are times when it is difficult to love our families, but it's something that we are commanded to do. Women, we need to love our children. There was a mother of 3 notoriously unruly youngsters. She was asked whether she would have children if she had to do it all over again, and she said yes. She said, but just not the same ones. We need to love our children if they're good or bad. And the best thing that you can do for your children is to love them. Of course, not all women are going to be mothers. There are women who are single, and we see that all the great things that they can do for the kingdom because of their singleness. But generally speaking, women that are mothers and they raise children, and in bearing these children, they have a responsibility to love those children, which means that they might have to sacrifice on their children's behalf. Now, loving our children doesn't mean giving them everything that they want and making sure that they keep up with the world. But loving our children requires discipline, and it instills in them the Christian values to live in this world that is full of sin, and teaching them to love Jesus and to care for their spiritual and emotional and physical needs. Children could make themselves more lovable by just doing some little thoughtful things, though, and expressing that love every once in a while. You know, most mothers aren't very smart. I don't know if y'all ladies knew that, but really, we as mothers aren't always very smart. We might have an high IQ, and we might be brilliant in dealing with people, but when it comes to being a mother, we will do things beyond common sense. We will stay up the entire night with our child when they are sick as a dog, and we'll stay right by their side when we really need to be asleep. But we'll do that as mothers, don't we? Or we'll help them with homework when we have absolutely no idea how to do that homework ourselves. Or when they have had 4 weeks to do a school project. How many of you mothers, the night before it's due, have helped that child with that project? And if you I know you have. Or when the child is having a hard day and they're depressed, or when they're depressed, or when they're hungry and they come in every hour, Mom, I want something to eat, and you feed them, or you clean up after them because they just don't have time to take care of those things. And all it takes is just a little thank you or an occasional hug from our child, and we get right up and get ready to do it all over again. Because we love our children. And if our husbands do the very same thing, if they just send us an occasional card or flowers, or just give us a hug and say, that was a great dinner, it's amazing what it can do for us as mothers. There was a husband and wife that were getting ready for bed one night, and the wife was standing in front of the mirror, and she looked at herself and she said, you know, honey, I look in this mirror and I'm seeing an old woman. She said, my face is wrinkled and my legs are flabby and I've got all this stuff all around my body, everything's sagging down. And she turned to her husband, she said, honey, can you just say something that'll make me feel positive about myself? And so the husband looked at her and thought for a moment, and just with all the love in his heart, he said, well, honey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with your eyesight. Now, that might be practical, but it isn't sweet, and it's not very loving. Our families need to be alert to see and make sure that we as moms hear some loving things as well. Well, number 2, a woman's character needs to be self-controlled. The King James translates this as discreet. In other words, there needs to be some restraint in emotion. There needs to be some degree of reservation. The Living Bible paraphrases it to live quietly and to be sensible. The Christian woman should not be a spacehead. She shouldn't be volatile. She shouldn't be subject to fits of anger or temper or uncontrolled bursts of excitement. And you say, hey, being that kind of person, being a quiet temperament person is just not me. I'm not the quiet type. I'm not reserved. I'm loud and I'm emotional, but let me tell you, at least I'm not boring. Well, he's really not discussing temperament here as much as he is talking about character. And regardless of your natural temperament, you need to remain under control. And if you're an extrovert, just don't take it to the extreme. Or if you're a big talker, learn to be still every once in a while. And if you're subject to bursts of emotions, don't let those emotions lead you somewhere that you shouldn't go or say things that you shouldn't say. Your husband and children need to know and have that security that you are under control. So don't fly off the handle frequently. Don't jabber on endlessly with nothing to say. Don't panic when there is pressure and go to pieces and blame yourself and God when everything goes bad. But you need to keep your poise, mothers, and practice self-control in stressful situations, and then you can create a very calm atmosphere in your home. I do have a tendency to get excited at times, and I know I do. And several years ago, when our oldest son, Kelly, was going into the 9th grade, and he was playing on a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and so excited, he was in high school, and on this tournament, out in the parking lot at Memorial High School, he fell and he broke his ankle. Well, I saw him, and I just screamed, "Kelly!" And I barely even checked to see how he was, and I ran and I got the car, brought the car up to where he was. I mean, I was just frantic because I thought, I've got to take him to the hospital. Is he going to make it? Is everything going to be okay? And he got in the car, and he looked at me and calmly, and he said, "Mom, it's okay. Don't spaz out." And I said, well, he was exactly right, because I got so excited. I lost control. And so we need to learn to be controlled in our life. The third thing we need to find out this morning is a woman's morality is to be pure. And it's absolutely essential to the well-being of our children and the moral standards of the mother to be respected. And I've heard it said that children can survive a bad father, but you really have a difficult time surviving a bad mother. And this relates back to the commitments of your marriage vows. And when you are devoted to one man, and that is, you are devoted to be morally pure to him. And women, Satan is going to tempt you to be impure. But if you're unfaithful to your husband, then you're going to be unfaithful to the Lord, and you are endangering your marriage, and you are endangering the well-being of your children, and you are endangering your spiritual life. You have to be modest and chaste and pure in heart and in mind. That needs to be in your speech and in your dress and in all your relationships. Christian mothers need to pass this on to their children. And our children need to see, and our husbands need to see, that you consistently set the moral tone in the home. And that's going to be tough to do if you saturated your lives with watching TV all day long and reading cheap books all day long. Philippians 4:8 says that whatever things are pure, think upon these things. There was a story of a mother who was so determined to keep her children from watching violence on TV that she had an agreement with them that every time something violent came on TV that they would turn it off. She said she would hear them in the other room and they would say, "Oh, please don't kill him, please don't kill him," because they knew the TV was going to go off. Sure enough, in 5 minutes it was off. But she really cared for that moral purity in her home. And if you want to be a holy woman, you need to work on what is on the inside. And that's what he is saying here. To teach women to be adorning their hearts. Teach women to be virtuous and godly on the inside. So if you're going to claim this godliness and this holiness and purity, then it ought to show on the outside. And women who do claim this godliness, you have to have your passions under control. You're not going to want to do anything that's going to draw attention to yourself, especially when we come together to worship. Holy women have always conducted themselves in this way. So Paul says, teach the women to be pure like that. Another thing, a quality of a godly woman, is to be busy at home. Now this is important because we do have many women that work today. And I am not here this morning to put a guilt trip on women that work. But for those of you who do have small children, I would encourage you to stay home if you possibly can. I want you to ask yourself some questions. Is it essential for you to work because you have a desire for material things that are excessive? Or would your children be better off with less things and more of you? Or do you work outside the home because it's really what you want? Or is it something possibly that your parents have instilled in you that you should pursue that career and you don't want to disappoint them? Or do you work outside this home because it's self-fulfilling and just makes you feel like a better person? Or are you just overly concerned about status? Now, nobody can answer those questions but you. But if you can't answer those questions to your satisfaction, then I would encourage you to quit your job and to stay home. But also, if you can't answer them to your satisfaction and you still feel like that you need and have to have a job outside the home, then you need to quit laying a guilt trip on yourself but just continue to make that home a priority in your life. I don't see this passage saying that it's always wrong for a mother to work outside the home, because there are many women who have done that and have raised successful children and have wonderful families. And I don't see this busy at home as you should not have another job or another outside interest. The Bible has many examples of godly women who had careers. There was Lydia, who was a seller of purple. Esther was a queen. Priscilla worked making tents. But for those who say that a woman shouldn't work outside the home, I want you to also think about Proverbs 31, where we know that it talks about the wife of a noble character being involved in real estate and merchandise. And then we see the women spent a fair amount of time outside the home buying and selling. But whether you work at home or whether you work outside the home, a married woman's primary responsibility is to her home and to her family. Proverbs 7:11 describes a woman who does not take this responsibility seriously. It says, she is loud and defiant, and her feet never stay at home. You know, there are employers today that have specially designed jobs that have been shared by two women, which helps women who have small children at home, and they allow you to even work from home. And they allow you to have flexible schedules. And they do this because there is so much outstanding talent in women. But Scripture here does say to be busy at home, which I really believe it means to make it a priority to be the guider of home. Now, there are certainly a lot of women who don't work outside the home, that stay home all day, and they don't make home a priority. They're busy on the golf course, or they're busy in the shopping malls, or they're busy watching television. But whether you choose a career outside their home or not, my point is this morning, just make the home your priority. And let your family know that there's nothing more important than taking care of them. And don't apologize if you don't have a career. The most creative job in the world involves fashion, decorating, recreation, education, transportation, psychology, romance, cuisine, literature, art, economics, government, pediatrics, geriatrics, entertainment, maintenance, purchasing, law, religion, energy, and management. And anyone that can handle all of those has to be somebody special, and that's a homemaker. So you do have a career if you do stay at home. Oh dear. And I'm running out of time, ladies. We need to make home and our children our priority. Let's go on. Women have an ability to lift the home to a higher level. And Paul isn't talking as much about the place as he's talking about the responsibility. The home is where a woman provides expressions of love for her husband and her children. Next, a woman is to be kind. And I think it's interesting that Paul talks about the words being kind. And when we think about the word being kind, the first thought ought to be that we are kind to our husband and our children. But you know, many times we are more kind to people that we meet for the first time, or kind to the people that we see at church. And the people that we love the most and that mean the most and that we take care of the most, we are often get angry with them and we gripe at them. But the Bible simply says, be kind and compassionate to one another. And if your attitude is to be grouchy, and if your attitude is that you don't want to be there in that home, then you know that place at home is not going to be a very pleasant place to live. But if your attitude is to be gentle and encouraging, to be kind, then you are going to have a much better home. The next quality is to be subject to your husband, and that's humility. It's a basic Bible principle that a husband is to be the leader of the home. He's not to be a dictator. And I'm not saying that he needs to say, I'm the king of the castle and you're nobody, because that's not the way it should be. But the wife should be respectful of the leadership of her husband. And you know, that may sound old-fashioned, but you know what? It really does work. At a time when many partnership marriages are falling apart, God has created us in a way that man's ego needs the assurance that he is the leader of the home. And we as women need to have that assurance that we are going to be protected and we are going to be loved. The same principle is stated in Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit to your husband as to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it. So women, you have a choice to make. You can either try to build your home in a world that says that we are just equal, that we are a partnership, and you know what, I have full rights and nobody's going to tell me what to do. Or you can try to build your marriage on the way that God has designed. When we have disagreements, I want to have the freedom to say, I don't really agree with you, but I will accept that my husband has the final say in that leadership. That takes humility, and that takes submission to God's authority. It eliminates the constant tug of war of seeing who's really in charge of that relationship that is so prevalent in many marriages. Let's see. Finally, a woman's motivation is that no one will malign the Word of God. There's no greater testimony to our faith than that of Jesus, that Jesus is in our homes. And skeptics might try to ridicule the Bible, but they won't ridicule a godly home because they look at those houses and they wish that their homes were like that. A mother's motivation is not just to try to convince the skeptic of this, but she needs to teach her own children to not malign the Word of God. Her primary purpose is to teach her children to know Jesus and Christ. And if the children sense that a mother is hypocritical, they're going to grow up to malign that Word and ridicule the church. But if they know that their mother's faith is genuine, even though she is imperfect, they're going to grow up to respect the Bible and the church. I want to close this morning with reading a book that you probably are all very familiar with. It was introduced to me several years ago. It's by Robert Munch, and it's called Love You Forever. A mother held her new baby and very closely rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she held him, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." The baby grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. And he grew until he was 2 years old, and he ran all around the house. He pulled all the books off the shelves, he pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, and he took his mother's watch and flushed it down the toilet. Sometimes his mother would say, "This kid is driving me crazy." But at night, when the 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room and crawled across the floor, and she looked up over the side of his bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." The little boy grew. He grew, and he grew, and he grew. He grew until he was 9 years old, and he never wanted to come in for dinner, and he never wanted to take a bath. And when Grandma visited, he always said bad words. Sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. But at night time, when he was asleep, the mother quietly opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that 9-year-old boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." The boy grew. He grew, and he grew, and he grew. He grew until he was a teenager. He had strange friends, and he wore strange clothes, and he listened to strange music. And sometimes his mother felt like she was in a zoo. But at night time, when the teenager was asleep, the mother opened the door to his room and crawled across the floor and looked up over the side of the bed. And if he was really asleep, she picked up that great big boy and she rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." The teenager grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. And he grew until he was a grown-up man, and he left home and he got his house across town. Oops, did I do wrong? Oh, thank you. But sometimes on dark nights, the mother got into her car and drove across town. And if the lights in her son's house were out, she opened his bedroom window and she crawled across the floor and she looked over the side of the bed, and it was a great big man. She would pick him up asleep because she wanted to make sure he was asleep, and she picked him up and she rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Well, the mother, she got older. She got older and older and older. And one day she called up her son and she said, "You better come see me because I'm very old and sick." So her son came to see her. And when he came to the door, she tried to sing a song. She sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always," but she couldn't finish it because she was too old and too sick. And so the son went to his mother, and he picked her up, and he rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he sang this song, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be." When the son came home that night, he stood for a long time at the top of the stairs. And then he went in where his very new baby daughter was sleeping. And he picked her up in his arms, and very slowly he rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while he rocked her, he sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Ladies, a mother's role in this world is one of the best roles you can possibly have. And one of the greatest things that a mother can do is to pass God's values and God's love onto her children. And then her children pass it to their children, and their children pass it to their children. We're thankful that God has established the position of being a mother. In Proverbs 31:26 it says, "She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of silence. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her."